In the last section, we marked our images instance variable on the image list widget as final, which indicates that you and I do not plan to change that thing at any point in time. So now that we've got the image list in a somewhat good state right here, it's time to actually add a build method to this thing that's going to look at our list of images right here and show one widget on the screen for each individual image. Let's first very quickly look at some documentation for a widget that we're going to use to render out that list of images. So back inside my browser, I'm back at docs.flutter.io, and on the top right-hand side, I'm going to search for ListView, and I'm looking for the ListView class. The ListView class is very heavily used inside of Flutter. So anytime you're going to make a list of elements, chances are you're going to end up using the ListView class. As such, the ListView class has a lot of very strong documentation in it. So if you want to, you could certainly take a glance at all the documentation in here. But for you and me, we're going to find that constructor section, as we usually do. Okay, so here's constructors. And you'll notice that there is a default constructor right here of ListView, and there's also a named constructor of .builder. There's a quick text description on both these. If we use the ListView constructor directly, then we are going to take a list of records and try to build a single widget out of each one, and we're going to create that entire array of widgets instantly. So the instant our entire application renders to the screen of our device, we're going to build out the whole list of every single element inside of our list view. So this is sometimes not the best approach from a performance perspective. Think about it. If we have a list of like 5,000 images, we don't want to build out 5,000 widgets the instant our application loads up. So very frequently, we instead use this builder named constructor. The ListView.builder constructor it works just a little bit differently in that it creates a list of widgets that are created on demand. The term on demand here means to say that as a user is scrolling around this list of records on their mobile device, only when the user starts to reach the end of that list will this ListView builder start to kick in and render more widgets to go on the screen. So we can think of ListView.builder as being a little bit more lazy in nature, whereas the ListView constructor is much more eager in nature and tries to build a list as soon as possible. Vast majority of the time, we're going to want to use this builder constructor because it's much stronger from a performance perspective. So all that leaves is, hey, how do we actually use this thing? Well, let's flip back over to our image list widget, and we'll define our build method in here and get a better idea of how to use that builder. So I'm going to define my build method. It's going to return something of type widget, and it's going to be called with that context argument that we've not yet discussed quite so much, and we're going to get around to that at some point in time. Then inside of here, we're going to return ListView.builder. We're going to provide two separate arguments to this thing. The first argument is going to be a named property of item count. So item count is going to tell the list view how many different widgets we're going to want to render on the screen. In our case, we probably want to render a number of widgets equal to the number of records that we have inside of our images list. So to tell the list view how many records we have, I'm going to say images.length like so. This is how many widgets we're going to want our list view to create. Then as a second argument, or the second name property I should say, we're going to provide a item builder. The item builder is a function. This function right here is going to be called with a context, context, and a second argument that is an integer called index. So let me tell you about how this item builder function works. As a user starts to scroll around on the device, the item builder function right here is going to be called. The list view expects that you and I are going to put some logic inside this function to construct a new widget that is going to represent every item inside of our list of images, or whatever we're trying to represent on the screen. The first argument to the function is context. It is the same type of context that is given to our build function right now. Again, not relevant for what we're doing right now. It will be relevant later on. The second argument right here is much more important. This is the index of the element that the list is trying to render on the screen. So for you and me, when our item builder first gets called to show our list of widgets on the screen, we're going to get an index of 0, which indicates to us that the list builder is trying to render the first element on the screen, like index 0, first element. So we're going to look into our images list right here. We're going to pull out the very first image model instance, or whatever instance is inside of there at index of 0. And then we're going to build and return a widget inside of here that represents that first image inside of our images list. Now, that's all a kind of complicated verbal description. So let's take a quick pause right here. We'll come back to the next section and start adding some code to our item builder function. So I'll see you in just a minute.